Ponga atención a esta rima y escuche. Las tierras son tomadas porque fueron robadas por latifundistas extranjeros, forestales y transnacionales.
Nuestras armas, las palabras y el derecho ancestral, mientras el Estado nos asesina con su fuerza policial, con sus balas metralletas. Esta lucha es desigual, estos cobardes asesinos nos disparan a matar. Son valientes con guanatos, zorrillos y pistola. No existe aún el pago de mierda que nos pueda parar.
Matías Catrileo, tu muerte no fue en vano. En todo el territorio se levantan tus hermanos. Matías Catrileo, tu muerte no fue en vano. En todo el territorio se levantan tus hermanos.
Y nuestros hermanos asesinados por resistir, mientras el perro asesino es trasladado, ascendido con medallas y premios por el Estado protegido.
Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.
Well, President Obama met with Peruvian President Alan Garcia at the White House on Tuesday. Obama praised Garcia for transforming Peru into, quote, an extraordinary economic success story. Garcia said his policy stood in contrast to the declining forces of what he termed socialist capitalism on the continent. The meeting came amidst growing unrest in Peru over the Alan Garcia government's free market policies that open up indigenous lands to resource extraction. And outside the White House, demonstrators tried to draw attention to Garcia's disregard for indigenous and environmental rights and accused him of trying to sell the Amazon rainforest. The meeting between Garcia and Obama took place 1 year after violent clashes in Bagua, Peru, where dozens were killed when the Garcia government sent military police to suppress indigenous protesters.
Among the protesters outside the White House Tuesday was Hollywood actress Q'orianka Kilcher. She's best known for her role as Pocahontas in the Oscar-nominated 2005 film The New World. Q'orianka, whose father is an indigenous Peruvian, chained herself to the fence of the White House, her body covered in black paint to represent oil. She was forcibly removed. The police had to use a saw to cut through her chains. Both Q'orianka and her mother, Saskia Kilcher, were arrested. Q'orianka was charged with disorderly conduct, her mother charged with defacing government property. We welcome them both to Democracy Now! Q'orianka and Saskia Kilcher were released last night. This is their first interview. Q'orianka, tell us why you chained yourself to the fence at the White House.
I chained myself to the White House because I really hoped that this message would get out, because Alan Garcia needs to start involving its indigenous peoples in decision-making process, which directly or indirectly affects their livelihood. Because the indigenous movement in Peru is very strong, and the indigenous leaders there are more than capable in being involved in decision-making process. And he's illegally auctioning off land without free, prior, and informed consent to its indigenous peoples.
And the irony of the president meeting with Alan Garcia almost a year to the date of the massacre that occurred in Bagua. Could you talk about that?
I was shocked by Obama's celebration of a political leader who calls his indigenous people second-class citizens and barbaric savages that stand in the way of progress. And being that I voted for Obama, I also feel a responsibility for urging my president to take a deeper look at Garcia and truly investigate Garcia's past as well as current doings. And I trust that when they do a proper further investigation, they would find Alan Garcia rather unethical and corrupt and maybe even criminal, but in any case, most certainly not in line with what Americans who voted for him would like to support. And as a young person who voted for Obama, I hold my president accountable to be the man that I voted for. And I have to say that development is not destruction, and human rights abuses are not extraordinary. And we cannot let the environment and people suffer anymore because of politics and greed.
I want to go to a clip of the Peruvian Indigenous leader, Alberto Pisango. He just returned to Peru after almost a year in exile in Nicaragua. Upon his return, he was immediately detained for 24 hours. Although he's been released, the charges against him related to protests he'd led last year that have still not been dropped.
He retornado a mi patria, al Perú, I've returned to my fatherland, to Peru, to demonstrate my innocence of the charges against me, and to contribute necessary reconciliation of all Peruvians.
That's Alberto Pizango. Q'orianka Kilcher, can you talk about him and what he faces in Peru?
I actually flew to Panama. I was requested by Alberto Pizango to come and accompany him back to Peru. I had not seen him in a long time, so it was really good to see an old friend. He was immediately arrested once we arrived in Peru, but on the plane we did have a conversation, and he told me that he comes back with love for his country, with love for his people, with love for his community, and with love for where he grew up. And he comes back to prove his innocence. When he was arrested, we held a vigil outside of the jail, and I had 2 cameras from my Youth for Truth on Q Initiative organization, and we were filming, and I went and sat on the steps, and the police tried to remove me, but they didn't. And then the next day, we were standing outside of the courthouse, and we were rallying out there, and the youth in Peru and the organization of the indigenous peoples there was amazing, and they loved their leader, Alberto Pizango, and it was a wonderful moment when he was released, and it was actually as well as the 30th anniversary of IDASEP, and it just was an amazing moment, and it was good to have one of our leaders back. However, there's still 9 indigenous leaders that have charges against them, and I urge President Obama to urge Alan Garcia to drop the charges against the other leaders, and urge Obama to urge President Alan Garcia to involve indigenous peoples in decision-making process and have the free, prior, and informed consent. Yeah, so that's what the situation is. Although Alberto Pizango was released, there is still major charges against him, and they can still take him back into jail. So it's very crucial that the world watches, and that Alan Garcia and the government of Peru knows that we're watching.
Q'orianka, you were arrested along with your mother, Saskia Kilcher. I'd like to ask her, first of all, the decision of both of you to get arrested, and especially in the light of all of the petroleum damage that we're seeing in the Gulf. If your mother could talk about the petroleum damage that's occurring in Peru.
Well, when Q'orianka came up with the decision of wanting to, make a strong statement, her youth organization, Youth for Truth in Los Angeles, they went through several scenarios. They decided to take a PVC pipe as well as a heavy-duty chain and do multiple tying downs to the fence. And then actually a couple of the really young members of her organization came up with this wonderful mix of finger paint, vegetable oil, and shampoo, which really looked like what we're seeing in the Gulf. And so Q'orianka was aware that she is going to have some pretty heavy charges, which, by the way, have been upgraded. She does not have the minor charge, which you mentioned earlier. It is now illegal entry, and we heard that they were trying to make both of our charges federal. I don't think it's going to happen, but still, they had us separated for a while. They were switching the charges around, but right now I believe that Q'orianka is charged actually with illegal entry onto the White House property, and the Secret Service and the HAZMAC and a lot of odd agencies seem to be very involved in this whole thing, which, of course, being that it was finger paint, we just hope that the charges are going to be proportionate to what BP shall receive for what they're doing in the Gulf. So we're good with whatever we are receiving. We believe in the U.S. justice system to give us what finger paint should get on the sidewalk and give BP what the millions and millions of gallons in the Gulf Coast shall get. So as long as it's proportionate, we're good with it.
We just have 15 seconds. Q'orianka, you are part Quechua, is that right?
Yes, I'm proud to be indigenous. I'm half Quechua Huachipaire from Peru.
I want to thank you both for being with us, Q'orianka and Saskia Kilcher. Q'orianka Kilcher, Hollywood actress, outspoken activist in environmental indigenous issues. Saskia Kilcher, her mother, they both just came out of jail after protesting outside the White House. That does it for our show. Democracy Now! Is produced by Mike Burke, Shufa Dokadusar, Amata Anja Kamat, Steve Martinez, Nicole Salazar, Hani Masood, Rabi Karen, Mike DeFilippo, Peter Curries, Miguel Naguer, our engineers. Special thanks to Becca Staley, Julie Crosby, Nick Gilla, Hugh Grant, Samantha Chambly, Jessel Noor, John Randolph, Kellen Innocent, Rakim Penny, Vesta Godars. I'll be in Washington, D.C. on Friday evening and Saturday and Sunday in Seattle, Washington. Go to our website, democracynow.org. I'm Amy Goodman with Juan Gonzalez.